Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. My guest today is not only a really good friend, but she's an inspiration to so many people. She's an inspiration to so many moms, parents, entrepreneurs, you name it. She's one of the very few people that I've encountered that is able to accomplish so much by juggling so many different activities without compromising what's most important to her. She's a best-selling author, she's an entrepreneur, an investor, a speaker, a mentor. She's the owner of a group of award-winning clinical massage studios. She has another company where she does play and movement for babies and toddlers. She's made her career about empowering wellness professionals to starting to grow their own practices. She's been in Forbes, she's been in Inc., in Wall Street Journal, she's been in Entrepreneur Magazine, ABC News, on the NASDAQ, Refinery 29, Women's Health, US News and World Report. She's everywhere. Let's get right into this. Without further ado, Rachel Beider, CEO and founder of Press Modern Massage and The Canopy. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, Rachel, my wife and I were talking after our last conversation where you had the opportunity to meet with Heather.
Mhm.
And she's still just completely just enamored and impressed by you because you've managed to do so many things. Just one of the things that you do in and of itself is difficult. And you do many things really exceptionally well. I mean, you're a mom of two kids, and that's been your priority, and it shows. And you're a great mom. You're a great CEO of two companies, and somehow it seems like you still manage to find time in the day. And I'm not sure how you do that. So, can we talk a little bit about you and your life and how have you gotten where you are? It's amazing to me.
I think, it's funny. I joke that anxiety is my superpower. I mean, it's certainly been a challenge that I've worked with my whole life, but historically, all of the moves that I've made have come from a place of anxiety, for me at least. For example, I decided to become a massage therapist and I was working for a spa and I realized there was just no job security and I wasn't really happy in the work that I was doing there. I tried to give them a lot of feedback and I didn't feel impactful in my career. And right out of school, I was working for a surgeon doing post mastectomy reconstructive surgery. And I was helping them with, it's called capsular contraction. When you have an implant after a mastectomy, it can get hard and immobile. So teaching women how to do self massage was one of my first jobs. I worked at a yoga studio. I worked at a spa. I just didn't feel like I fit in very well in any of these places. And as it turns out, I'm actually really bad at managing up. I really hate having a boss. I kind of like being in charge. I like having control over everything. That's that anxiety. So I really wanted to start a private practice, but I had student loans and debt and no real money to start a practice with. So I decided to test out the idea of a barter. I went to a physical therapy clinic and asked them, if I see your patients 2 days a week for free, would you let me use the space to see my own private clients? And he said yes. So in May, I had 10 clients who were like friends of mine, to be honest. But by August, I had 110 clients. And all those people who were coming for those free 10 and 15-minute sessions, I was giving them a little card that said $20 off your first appointment for new clients. Come see me for a full hour. And that was really exciting for me because I didn't have the money for a website at the time. It was 2008. So, there was not really social media on the same way that there is now. But I just did a very guerrilla tactic, which I still do. I have marketing postcards that I still use to this day where I hand them out. And I try to see a volume of people. I try to target people who see a lot of their own private clients. So personal trainers, hairdressers, chiropractors, folks who I knew if I see this person, they're going to refer me 50 people, 100 people. I have a chiropractor who I still work with to this day, who I trade massage for chiropractic with, and he's probably sent me thousands of people. So making really deep connections that I've sent him thousands of people. So, just building relationships, doing a very strong B2B connection with folks has made a huge difference. And that's how I started my private practice. I eventually moved into a small location and hired my very first employee, which was terrifying, and raised my rates, moved into a bigger location, raised rates again. And it took time. I've been at this 15 years, but now we are 4 locations. There's about 70 of us. And yeah, I'm happy with how it's grown.
Yeah, 4 locations, but you have more 5-star ratings than any other studio in New York City. So you've done that. And then you also have this other company, Canopy. You've done extraordinarily well in New York City. You want to talk about prices. You got New York City rent, you've got a very competitive landscape, and then you've got, there's hiring challenges with, a licensed massage therapist as well in New York City. It would have been a heck of a lot easier. If you wanted to take the easy route, you could have come down to Florida. And then you started Canopy. How you started or why you started it for me was, it sent chills down my spine. It just speaks volumes of who you are. So why don't you tell the rest of the world why you started it or how?
I have a 4-year-old who was born in New York City, March 24 of 2020. And that was a week into shelter in place. And that morning they announced my husband couldn't attend my labor. And I was like, no way, we're switching hospitals. I'm not doing this alone. But, it was a really unpleasant and, we're lucky, we're grateful we survived it, we're all healthy. But it was a really painful, isolating time. I had terrible postpartum anxiety and depression. I didn't get to do any of the fun stuff that I was excited to do. Like I didn't do any of the mom and me gymboree classes or the baby and me yoga classes or the mom meetup circle thing. Like I just didn't have community around me. And it was really, really lonely. It was a really hard time. And so when I became pregnant with Henry, my second son, about the time I was 5 months pregnant, I tried to think about what did I want to do differently this time. I'm always trying to live very intentionally and with a path. And I remember writing in my journal, I want to have community. I want to go to the classes. I just want to do all the things with him that I didn't get to do with my first baby. And around the same period of time, I was super stressed because my original location for my massage business, which had been there for 15 years, they're selling our building, which I was just devastated by because, like, that's my mainstay. It's the one that has it's gotten me through many phases of life from my 20s to my 40s. That's been a really important business for me. And so when we relocated, I got super, super anxious, super scared. What's this going to mean for us? How's it going to be? And I'm so grateful for that because just as we were finishing construction on that space, I remember looking upstairs and thinking, I wonder who's going to be the neighbor. And it was an empty floor. It's like a 5,000 square foot empty space. And I remember thinking in my biggest, wildest dreams, I would just have it be like a living room for my baby. So I could hang out in beautiful natural light, nice and calm. I just tend to get really overstimulated, especially postpartum. Noises are really obnoxious and bright LED lights are really obnoxious. I didn't want to raise my kid in a Chuck E. Cheese. And a lot of the play spaces kind of feel that way. They can be really loud and dirty and overwhelming. And maybe they're good for bigger kids, but the little guys just get run over. And I was like, I kind of want to start a baby play space. And I hadn't seen one before, but I started looking into it and playing around on Pinterest and doing what I like to do, which is collecting a lot of data. I called a lot of business owners who are already doing it and asked them just, can I buy you a cup of coffee and chat? And I got a lot of great advice about what not to do, what to do, listened to some podcasts, read a bunch of books. But what I realized is one of the most important things I needed was buy-in from my current team because I was 5 months pregnant and I realized by the time I'm going to finish a build out, I'm going to give birth. And I was right. It was the day I gave birth, we finished the build out. I also got the green light from my contractor, who I love, love, love. He's built all my spaces. He is the absolute best person. He saw what I saw upstairs. He saw the vision I saw, and he was like, I'll front you some funds. So I got really lucky that he was my first and only real investor in this business Canopy because I've never taken investors in any way like that. So that was really, really helpful. And it decided it for me. Okay, I have to do it. And the buy-in from my team was also massively important because we get to economies of scale. This is how I've grown press as well. I have the same phenomenal ops manager overseeing everything. And so I knew her, I liked her, I trusted her. I knew that she could scale with me. I knew that she was hungry for more projects. And this was a year where we were not going to be growing any more press locations. And I thought, you know what, let's put our brains to something new, to a new project. And so they were all 1,000% on board and really excited. And it's been really fun.
You live by a certain level of discipline and integrity that I really do admire. One of those is you have non negotiables. And some of my most successful clients live by the same thing. They have these non negotiables. One of them, his non negotiables is I have to be home at 6 p.m. so that I can wash my girls, bathe them and young kids and whatnot. It's like that's my non negotiable because if it means I have to go back to work later, if something is happening, I'll go back to work. But my non negotiable is that. And he has a few other non negotiables. What are your non negotiables?
It's not original, but bath time, bedtime is a real thing. It's when we connect as a family. I like to also be there to read my older child a book
Yeah.
and put him down for the night. Though in general, we tend to do dinner around 5 o'clock. So I like to end my day a little early so that I can be there for 5. I also typically have a summer Fridays for life kind of feeling. So I like to have a solid weekday off where I'm not doing any work. One of the things I like about owning my business is I get the freedom to do stuff during the daytime hours where other people are not doing it. So, like grocery shopping when it's quiet and doing self care things like getting my hair cut or going to therapy. Like Friday is mom's day to do what mom wants. So, I try to keep my schedule completely free of meetings and have that be just personal day so I don't freak out. Because, as any parent knows, the weekend is actually the stressful, hard time when you have young kids because that's when they're not in school or daycare, and that's when you're, at least for us, like fully on parent duty. And for me, parenting is actually profoundly harder than work.
And you know what the thing is, I don't want to confuse our audience or the message here too, because the point is that when you know what's most important to you, it's about living with an integrity of what's important to you. If you're a mom and what's most important to you is just focusing in on your career or your business or whatnot, if that's most important to you and that's what's in integrity, like you'll be a better mom for your kids by living with an integrity. Or if you're a mom that is like, you know what, for me to be happy, I have to spend more time with my kids and live my life around that. If that's what puts you in integrity, then that's great. The point of the story and what Rachel has done a really good job with is that she's very intentional. She created the life that she wants. So she's the architect of her life. She's designed her life and she's been very intentional for what she's willing to accept and what she's not willing to accept. Most of us do things opposite. Most of us actually wait to let life happen to us. And then we get overwhelmed, we get disappointed, we get frustrated. And I see this a lot of times actually with moms where they're at conflict because the business is taking them too far away from their children and they feel an overwhelming sense of guilt. And that creates more overwhelm, more burnout, more stress, more anxiety, more all of this. So what advice do you have, Rachel, for not just the moms, but the dads that might be feeling, guilt or, just like, what do I do?
So I want to put this out there. I am not above feeling guilt or doubt or burnout. I think it's a balance. I think one thing that you and I had talked about before is you're juggling a lot of balls in the air, and some of them are plastic and some of them are glass, right? If you drop the plastic, it's going to bounce, drop the glass, it's going to break. And so the discernment of knowing this is really important to me, we're not ever going to drop that ball versus this one, it'll be okay. I can pick it back up tomorrow. Having that discernment is huge. I think keeping some of that anxiety under control for me, it's been with medication and therapy and working out and sleeping enough, which I'm massively privileged to be able to do all of those. I think they all work together. And yeah, self care is just one of those. I know it's kind of a buzzword, but it's real and that looks different for everyone. For me, a lot of it is just having that rhythm and those things set in place so that I don't go above my limits. But it's not to say that I never feel guilty about doing one thing or the other. Sometimes I do. And I think giving yourself a little bit of grace during those times and a little kindness goes a really long way. And for me, also just trusting in my own resilience and resourcefulness to problem solve. That's been really huge. And occasionally checking in, especially, I can't say any of this without mentioning my spouse. I married someone who's super helpful, and being really vulnerable and honest with my spouse and with people I work with when I need help, reach out before you burn out. That's an internal policy that we have. it'll be often that there's a challenging situation with one of our kids where David will look at me or I'll look at him and I'm like, I need you to rescue me, or like vice versa, where, thankfully we have each other to say, okay, dad's going to step in and handle this one, or mom's going to take one outside for a bit and handle that one. And we spell each other, and that makes a huge difference. It was a very painful learning process to take my hands off the steering wheel, because that's what it felt like, and not micromanage and not. I think what it came down to is just learning that it's not just okay to need and depend on people, but necessary. And that when you hire people that you genuinely can trust, who really have your back, that's what allows you to grow.
And I've had the pleasure of meeting several different members of your team, and your team comes to play full out. Like, they want to not only develop themselves for their own benefits, but develop themselves to help further develop the companies that you own. And it's just a really, really great thing. And it can help so that when you do want to step away, I see them as supporting that decision rather than resenting that decision. You see that part of that speaks volumes to you as a leader, right? Because there's those leaders who, the team resents them for being successful or making decisions that, like taking Fridays off, but your team supports you. And it's really a wonderful thing. And so, what advice would you then say, would you give to other CEOs and founders that are like, how do you do that? How do you get a team that is willing to go out of their way to grow that business together and encourage you and support you?
Yeah, I think the leadership model I prefer in general, I don't love the very like authoritarian patriarchal thing. That's one of the reasons I hated working for other people, when they're like, I'm the boss and this is what's going to happen and this is how it is. Like, that doesn't work for me. I'm naturally, like, I don't look it now, but like definitely a little bit punk rock, definitely anti-authority. Like, definitely had those moments in my life.
Are you a closet hippie?
And, I think having the model that I subscribe to the most is probably servant leadership. So, this idea that my job, and anyone who's in management on my team's job, is to make sure that every single person under them has exactly what they need to thrive in their position and feel really happy and really stoked. So, whether that's mentorship, whether that's, listening at the base level, they want to change. It's these little things. It's this attention to detail, but it's also making sure that they feel like they have everything they need, because that's what people really want. People want to do well. They want to feel impactful. They don't want to feel like a bystander. And I think when you allow people the opportunity to truly be impactful, and you listen and you come at them from a place of, how can I make this awesome for you? It just makes for really happy team members.
Now, we're going to shift gears a little bit. I've long talked about the importance of AI, and how AI, most companies are ill prepared for AI, and that there's a massive competitive advantage. It helps with speed and execution and brainstorming and all this other stuff. And I used to say that every business and every industry will be disrupted by AI. Perhaps the only one that's safe from disruption is massage.
Sorry to burst that bubble.
I believe you were just featured on Colbert or something like that, right?
The company I've been working with many years, a friend of mine, Keith Angel, who I think you know from YEC, he said, Rachel, come check this out, this massage robot thing. And I was like, oh boy, it's about 5 years ago. Yeah, I was like, this is probably going to be a waste of my afternoon, but sure, I like Keith. I'll play ball, I'll come hang, I'll check it out. And I'm really, really glad I had just come from Tony Robbins' Business Mastery, where one of the things he talks about is stay alert to technology, stay aware of changes that are coming, don't be afraid of them, embrace them, stay current. And I remember getting on the table and experiencing their little demonstration and being like, my brain was just like a slew of curse words. Like, I was pissed because I was thinking, this thing is better than some of the interviews I've gotten recently, and that's dangerous. Like, we're in big, big trouble. And I remember thinking, okay, if you can't beat them, join them. Let's find out more. And I want to be involved with whatever that looks like. I want to be involved in making this awesome. And so that day I became an investor. Unbeknownst to me, Keith was also an investor, and he just wanted my feedback, invested in the safe round. And so I became an advisor to them. I worked with them weekly developing content. I worked with them regularly developing the shape of the touch point, which looks a whole lot like my elbow and forearm. I worked with them on the user experience, what you see when you're laying face down looking at the iPad. I worked on uh, what the tone should feel like, what the color of the table, what the room should feel like, what the aesthetic should be. Just, gosh, even just speaking with Eric, who's a phenomenal CEO, really just class act, talking about just what could it look like. And I've been extremely lucky to work with that team. And over the last 5 years, even through the pandemic, seeing them through their Series A and launching the very first table in my massage studio in Union Square. So the beta launch happened just a few months ago, and it's been going really, really well. And I'm just super excited to be a part of it. It's been the craziest thing I've ever worked on in my life. It's not something I expected to be doing. And I wanted it in my studios. You might think, like, hey, isn't that kind of against your best interest? But the real answer is we are massively short staffed in our industry. I could have hired 30 people yesterday and it would barely cover what I need. I would have opened a dozen more massage studios if I had enough therapists to hire. There just aren't enough. I sit on the boards of both the massage schools that are the biggest in New York City. I literally attended a board meeting this morning, and I can tell you they're graduating 30 kids, and the pass rate of exams, it's not 100%. I'm not at liberty to say what it is, but let's just say there's only 20 something who are able to be hired, who are going to be licensed. And that's for the entirety of Manhattan, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, like all of greater New York City. Imagine every chiropractor, every massage studio, every spa, every hotel, every gym. We're just massively, massively short staffed. And it's not because we're not a desirable workplace. People come out of school and ask to work for my company. We're a very well known company. We treat our folks extremely well. There just aren't enough of them. And so for me, this idea of I can use one of our treatment rooms and see clients morning to night, back to back to back to back in a row, versus I don't do that with my own therapist. We take breaks in between. It's happy to see clients back to back to back. It doesn't burn out. So, and even just for the sake of my staff being able to get self-care, being able to get on the table themselves. Most of my staff is booked through weeks and weeks in advance. Their clients can't get in to see them. So this idea that they could say, I know I can't work on you the next 3 weeks while I'm booked, but jump on the table, get those trigger points in your hip worked out. Like, just, it's got so much potential. So I'm really excited that I was able to participate, and Escape is doing extremely well. We just had a nice article in Vogue. And yeah, it's a dream to be able to work with a company like that.
So people are getting some massages, but where do you see the industry going, say, 5 years from now?
There are a few kinds of people, right? Some people will always be more comfortable with humans, and that's amazing. Like, I think most people love humans. I don't see human massages going anywhere, but I do see this as making massage more accessible to even more people. It might be less costly than humans. It might be better for some folks who, for whatever reason, don't feel safe or comfortable being touched by another human. A lot of people have different touch histories. Someone who's been through a traumatic experience with another human being might be a little bit vulnerable and afraid to be touched by another human. We saw a pandemic happen where no one wanted to be in a room less than 6 feet away from another human. You know, there are lots of circumstances and situations where someone might not feel comfortable, even just voicing their opinion. Hey, could you do more pressure? Or hey, could you do less pressure? We as therapists, it's our job to make people feel comfortable, but there will always be some people who are just not. And so this starts to open up possibilities. I know one of the investors owns a group of elder care homes, and this allows for that group to experience touch regularly and accessibly. I mean, there's also like a massive sports team who has it to get a competitive advantage. It's all over the place. It's going to be in hotels that I can't talk about yet. It's going to be in some gyms. There's a huge long list of folks who have signed up for it. But I think there is in this world room for both. I don't think people should be afraid of embracing technology. I think the more massage that our world has, the better. I think people are happier and calmer, and there's nothing bad about that. So I'm just thrilled.
Well, that's it. Ever since I was a little kid, I remember something was coming up, like a new technology that was argued to replace humans. So I can imagine even before me, when John Deere was coming around and whatnot, that, farmers were probably like, oh, machines are going to take over farming. In the industrial age, oh, machines are going to take over employees. And, we've heard about this over websites. So we've been hearing it repetitive. But what this does do, though, and there are going to be a group of people that are going to be replaced. But the people who are going to be replaced are the marginal people, the people who won't level up. And this is every area in every occupation across the board. Like if you just deliver a so-so massage and you're not committed to delivering the best massage possible, you know what? You might as well go back to school and learn something else at this point. But if you deliver an exceptional massage, people will seek you out regardless, because whether it's those who enjoy to have a conversation and some connection when they're on the table, I love the warmth of the human hand. And there's science that, will back up the fact that another human hand giving a massage, that it's so good in so many different ways that go way beyond just the muscular benefit.
There's something to be said for the human connection and yeah, the bonds that you make when you've worked with someone. When I started doing more managerial stuff and less hands-on work in my own studio, I wanted to maintain my skill set and I wanted to just sort of make sure that I was doing what I needed to do and contributing back to the world in a way. And so I ended up volunteering for a place that works with people who have terminal illness. And there's something really special about working with that population and the connections that you form. It's a really magical thing.
All right, we're going to be wrapping up today's podcast. I think the most important takeaways that I want you to have really is you can have everything in your life that you want, so long as you're intentional and you make life happen for you, as opposed to just letting life happen to you. You make life happen for you. Well, it's not always, roses and butterflies every day, as Rachel alluded to. It just gives you the best chance to be happy, to live in this state of gratitude, to appreciate your life, to do the things that you want to do. Let's face it, when we made the decision to become entrepreneurs, like most of us, we make this decision because we want to make more money and we want to have freedom. But then you look back and you start this business with this dream of more money and more freedom. Before you know it, your budget is tight and you work more hours than you did if you were just to stay with a job. I ran through that situation once before. I used to say, hey, I'd shovel shit for $1 million. And well, I feel like in many ways that came true. When I made my first $1 million, I was the most unhappy that I had ever been in my life, because I let life happen to me. I worked every waking hour of every day. I'd set my alarm for, I think it was 2:30 in the morning, so I wouldn't quote unquote oversleep. I put myself in a very unhealthy situation, ended up in the emergency room. Doctors told me I was dying, my organs were shutting down, and the whole deal. I knew things had to change. So over a period of time, I realized what Rachel was talking about, the power of actually being intentional, making life happen for you. And if there's one big takeaway that I want you to take from today's podcast, it's really that. And Rachel's done such amazing things, building most highly rated massage studio out in a very competitive market in New York City, not just having one studio, but she's got several studios. Then she started this other company inspired by the love she has for her kids, Canopy, which is also doing really well. And we've got the impact of AI and how that's impacting massage, and how she's adapting and evolving. So a lot of takeaways here. So if you want to learn more about Rachel Beider, you can find her on LinkedIn. That's Rachel Beider, Beider. You can learn more about her journey and the different things that she shares. When you're in New York City, you can check her out at Press Modern Massage and see what an award-winning massage studio actually, what that experience is. Over at Press Modern Massage, if you're lucky, maybe you'll be able to find an opening where you can try one of those AI massage bots too. That might be pretty cool. Or if you've got little ones, check out the Canopy. And as a reminder, for more tips, strategies, and information to take your business beyond 7 figures, you can also check us out over at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gaudet with my good friend Rachel Beider, and I will see you in another episode.